All the warning signs were there. Israel's new far-right Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has stormed the Al-Aqsa mosque compound in Al-Quds, a move that has drawn strong condemnation on an international scale. The United Arab Emirates and China have called for a UN Security Council meeting, while several countries, including Iran, Germany, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, they have already joined the Palestinians in denouncing the intrusion by Itamar Ben-Gvir and its storming of the Al-Aqsa mosque. What is a big deal? That is what we'll be covering in this edition of The Spotlight. Our guest joining us is Elijah Magnier, who's a journalist and political analyst who joins us from Brussels to discuss this with us. Elijah Magnier, welcome. Taking a look at the reaction that has come through on this far-right Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir storming of the Al-Aqsa mosque compound, tell us what you think. The volume of denouncements that have come and the criticism, both from within and from the outside, is somewhat a lot compared to other incidents that have happened in the occupied territories, which should also deserve the same kind of attention. How do you see this?
Thank you for having me. I think this is a continuous provocation from the Israeli sides that will never learn from history. In the year 2000, Ariel Sharon stormed Al-Aqsa and created the second intifada. In 2009, again, the internal Security Minister Yitzhak Aharonovich and Avigdor Lieberman stormed Al-Aqsa and went into the Holy Mosque. And then now again we see Ben-Gvir. But last year there were around 48,000 Israeli settlers who violated the Al-Aqsa area. And this is a continuous provocation of the Israelis, who are continuously insisting on occupying further territory from the Palestinians. And they have the right to do so because there are no accountability, because the Arabs are normalizing with the Israelis, because Turkey has returned the ties with Israel and re-accepted the Israeli minister. We see the ambassador. We see the Emiratis doing the same. They are flirting between Saudi Arabia and Israel. All these condemnations are really a bit folkloric. At the end of the day, if the Arabs regain relationship with Israel, Israel is going to continue violating the right of the Palestinians, continue refusing to give the Palestinian back their land, continue refusing to give a state to Palestine, and perhaps that will help the Palestinians to unite against the Israelis once for all.
Taking a look, first of all, let me bring Joe Catron in, who's joining us, U.S. coordinator at the Samidoun Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network from New York. Joe Catron, welcome. Taking a look at the reaction in particular, which is quite swift. I don't know if you agree with that or not. And let's focus on one that the United Arab Emirates and China have given, which is calling for a UN Security Council meeting. Now, there are a couple of things here that are very interesting. First of all, this call for a UN Security Council meeting, do you think that it's going to happen? Will the UN convene on this? There are reports that they are, but what's your take on it?
I haven't had a chance to look at the process, what's involved in convening such a meeting. I can guess who the opposition is in this case, led by the United States. But given the massive outcry over this provocation, I do think, that being said, that it's very likely. It's clear that much of the world is responding strongly to this and is not willing to give it a pass, as they so often do when it comes, as you say, to other sorts of Israeli crimes against Palestinians elsewhere in the occupied territories.
When we take a look, Elijah Magnier, at the United Arab Emirates' response to this, it's quite telling in the fact that, first of all, it's one of the countries, Persian Gulf Island countries, that has normalized ties with Israel. We know that Bahrain is also on that list, and we know that based on the most recent UNGA resolution, it was also one that actually voted for Israel to be referred to the ICJ, the most recent resolution. Do you think this is going to affect that relationship?
Of course not.
It's very possible.
Sorry, Joe Catron, this is for Elijah Magnier. I apologize. Elijah Magnier, go ahead.
Of course, it won't affect the relationship between the Emiratis and the Israelis, neither the Bahraini and the Israelis, or Turkey and Israel, or China and Israel. At the end of the day, the United Nations is controlled by the Western country. And even with condemnation, there are over 178 UN resolutions against the Israeli aggression, against the Israeli human crime, and crime against humanity. And all these have been disregarded by Israel and by the international community. So if the Emiratis is condemning or asking for a meeting for the Security Council, what is going to come out of this meeting? Everybody is aware, country leaders are aware, journalists, analysts, and observers understand very well that this is not going to lead to anything and is not going to stop the Israeli violation. And we will see more from Ben-Gvir in the next month, because he's going to be with us in the new government of the far right, and he's going to push further the Palestinian into a corner. He will mistreat them. He will establish more relationship with the Arabs. Benjamin Netanyahu already informed us that there are surprises with Saudi Arabia. All these countries who are issuing the condemnations are really bubbles, but empty bubbles. It's kind of popcorn with a lot of big size but empty inside. At the end of the day, nobody is supporting the Palestinian cause but Iran and the axis of the resistance, Syria and Iraq and Yemen. And we don't see any of the Gulf countries who are shamelessly established relationship with Israel, disregarding the right of the Palestinians, are going to come out with anything that will hurt Israel for its decision of violating the Haram al-Sharif.
Shokatron, do you agree?
I broadly agree, yes. I do think that the imperialist countries will move heaven and earth to defend Israel, even in the face of these unprecedented provocations, unprecedented in their own way. Certainly, we've seen equally grotesque Zionist crimes, starting with the ethnic cleansing, the Nakba of 1948. But this new approach of open aggression, not only against Palestinians, but against world opinion, is something new. And those who seek to defend Israel in the face of this behavior will have their work cut out for them. But I do think that they are ultimately likely to succeed in the short term, at least in terms of defending it in the UN and similar venues like that would be in a position to impose meaningful sanctions in response.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to see if I can get some hope into this, and maybe something will happen. So, Elijah Magnier, let me start with the U.S. reaction here. That was quite interesting. I don't know what you think, where U.S. said in a warning that it could provoke violence, and the U.S. actually did say, or recall a 2000 visit by, as you mentioned, the then opposition leader Ariel Sharon, which became one of the main triggers for the Second Palestinian Intifada, which lasted until the year 2005. That was a U.S. reaction. What do you think of it?
I think there are very bad relationship between the current U.S. administration and Benjamin Netanyahu, and that is not unknown. However, the the strategic relationship between the Israelis and the Americans will not change the position of the Americans toward Israel. Even if the Americans express their concern about the arrival of Ben-Gvir and the other far-right members of the Israeli government, we have to know that in Israel, there are the far right and the far right that are leading the country. How it means that we don't have moderate. There are no moderate in Israel. There are only far right people who try to race among each other who's going to kill more Palestinians, or who's saying that he has killed in the past more Palestinians or has no problem in killing more Palestinians. Well, the only thing that we cannot blame the Americans here or the Israelis or the Arabs who normalize with Israel. We have really to look at the Palestinian unity. If the Palestinians are not going to be united, then the Israelis and the Americans and the Arab will always make fun of them, will disregard their right, will close an eye of whatever the Israelis are doing, and Benjamin Netanyahu will certainly start building more settlements and will not look at what the United Nations or other international laws are saying or say about this issue, because Israel has always violated international laws.
Taking a look at now the Palestinian reactions, Joe Catron, I'm going to go with what Hamas has said, where it is said in terms of the whole, I guess, desecration, that this move is crossing its red line. And it's holding talks right now to see what will be the next move. And now you have Ben-Gvir, who has said that there won't be racist discrimination. I'm paraphrasing. Jews will visit the Temple Mount, as he calls it. We made it clear to Hamas, we don't give in, we don't surrender, we don't blink. Do you think that the way that Ben-Gvir is approaching this, and we're only looking at, what, 6 days since the Knesset convened, and of course we are aware of the history of Ben-Gvir. I mean, maybe everyone isn't, but pretty much whoever follows Israeli politics is aware of Ben-Gvir and who he is. So are we being set up here? Because our guest Elijah Magnier makes a good point. No matter what UN resolutions have been passed, the U.S. has been there. The U.S. is not going to break its, as it has said, unwavering support of Israel. So what are we looking at here when it comes to the way Ben-Gvir has moved ahead, especially with this move with Al-Aqsa Mosque, and of course the way the Palestinians are reacting?
Ben-Gvir has historically been an extreme marginal figure, even by the standards of the Zionist movement and the Zionist regime in Tel Aviv. And his sorts have typically been arrayed against more pragmatic Zionists who are satisfied with the status quo, which is largely worked out to their benefit. And this is certainly the arrangements that are favored by the American ruling class and government, and ruling classes and governments elsewhere in the imperialist countries. They're happy with things as they've been going, and they see no reason to change them. Ben-Gvir, as an extreme ideologue, is now upsetting this in a way that we haven't exactly seen in some time. And it's a reflection of the political crisis of Zionism that he's in a position to do so. A few years ago, it would have been unthinkable for such a frankly clownish figure to occupy such a key position in an Israeli government. Today, that's the only way a viable Israeli government can be assembled, by incorporating these kinds of figures. So as a result, the pragmatic Zionists and the imperialists are going to find it very difficult to proceed as they largely have, by maintaining the status quo with incremental gains here and there. Ben-Gvir and those like him are determined to shake things up, to advance the speed of Zionist gains in occupied Palestine. And what the Palestinian response will be, of course, remains to be seen, and will have a great deal to do with how the rest of the world responds. In May 2021, we saw this kind of aggression against Al-Aqsa Mosque result in an unprecedented level of Palestinian unity in the popular uprising of that year, which was reflected in broad solidarity across the world. What's happening now, what's going to happen next, I really can't say, but we'll see.
Well, maybe his portfolio may indicate as to what's going to be happening this year. Elijah Magnier, Ben-Gvir has under his watch and responsibility Israeli forces, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, taking a look at settlements, taking a look at the overall, I guess, security situation. He has said, as an example, when it comes to Palestinians, once I become minister, I would promote a law that imposes the death penalty against all Palestinian terrorists and would execute the ones who commit acts of terror. Israeli prisons, under those laws, the Knesset member said there would be no use for the Israeli prisons. For soldiers, I would provide immunity for all Israeli soldiers. Aren't we being set up for what's to come?
I think Ben-Gvir considers every Palestinian good to be killed, and he would wish to see everybody piled up in Gaza, and even the West Bank is without Palestinian. Even for him, the 1948 Palestinians who are living in different Israeli and Palestinian occupied cities, for him, they should be stripped from the nationality if they support the Palestinian and they are not loyal to Israel. For him, he doesn't want Palestinian on the Palestinian occupied territory. He just wants Israelis to be there. And he is pulling a group from the army and from the border troops to bring them in the country to kill more Palestinians, to harm more Palestinians, to close more on the Palestinian movement and restrict the daily movement. He wants really to suffocate the Palestinian. This is why he insisted in taking the internal security, because he wants to use the most horrible measures against the Palestinians to push them out of their territory and to push more Palestinian exodus from their own country. That is the objective of Ben-Gvir, and this is why the Americans, just to fake their concern about democracy, because they are very much aware what Itamar Ben-Gvir is capable of, told the world that they are concerned about what Ben-Gvir is going to do. But are they going to take measure against the Israeli government? Of course not. Are they going to refuse to deal with Ben-Gvir? Certainly not. They're going to deal with the Israelis, business as usual, and from time to time we will hear some Americans just expressing some condemnation just to make sure that they still carry the flag of democracy, like to blur the eye of the world. Ben-Gvir has been selected by Benjamin Netanyahu just to make sure that the Palestinian will be totally oppressed and suffocated, and it's up to the Palestinian to react to that.
Okay, it's very hard, isn't it, Joe Catron, when I hear Elijah Magnier talk there, it's very hard to imagine how much worse it can get for Palestinians. But given the context that Elijah Magnier just put for us and the information that I gave, that is a possibility. But how can the reaction in the past then suffice the American reaction, or the Palestinian reaction for that matter, or the world reaction? Because if those things happen, there needs to be, we need to enter another phase to stand up to the occupying regime. What could that be?
Well, I don't presume to tell Palestinians under occupation how they should proceed. Of course, in May 2021, as I mentioned, the unprecedented unity of the uprising, and particularly the armed resistance from Gaza, quickly brought Israel to heel, forcing an end to its incursions at that time into Al-Aqsa. What's going to happen now is, I can't immediately say. I don't think anything is definite. Much depends on what the next steps are and how much Ben-Gvir and other figures like him are allowed to provoke. As for the rest of us, I think our tasks are clear, certainly within imperialist countries like the United States. As always, we need to figure out how to end our government's support for the Israeli occupation regime. Our task remains the same, even if the clownishness of a figure like Ben-Gvir in some ways may make it easier. Certainly, Joe Biden is going to find the behavior of the new Israeli government less hard to defend, if only because they don't make any effort at all to hide their aims. Elijah mentioned Ben-Gvir's goal as being the displacement of Palestinians. I fully agree, but I would add to that that that's the goal of Zionism as a whole and of all Zionists. So their disagreements are about strategies and tactics, how they're going to drive Palestinians out of their land and steal it for themselves. And the antics of someone like Ben-Gvir will make it increasingly difficult, I might go so far as to say impossible, for Israel's defenders to pretend something else is going on.
Thank you very much. We're going to have to end it there. Joe Catron, U.S. Coordinator, Samidoun Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network. Elijah Magnier, thank you so much. Journalist and political analyst from Brussels. Thank you to you both. And with that, we come to an end for this edition of The Spotlight from Ika Vatawe and the team. It's goodbye.